So I'm so glad you're joining us. United Way is such a great organization, and I am excited to see what you have to share with us about 211 if you're ready to go.
Yeah, I am. Thanks so much for having us. Yeah, as she said, my name is Hannah, and this is my colleague Miranda. We work with 211. We're based out of United Way of the Midlands in Omaha, but we do cover the entire state of Nebraska as well as parts of Southwest Iowa. So I'm just here to tell you a little bit about 211 and how we think our services can really support your work in libraries across Nebraska. So I apologize, I have a really bright light behind me. I'll try to block it out. Really what I should have used as my background is I just organized all of my books by color. I'm wondering from a library perspective how allowed that is. I think it's pretty fun, but it might be a little taboo. So sorry, I'm just going to pull up this presentation. We'll go ahead and get started. Awesome. Can everyone see my screen? And then when I make it full screen, we're good. As I mentioned, my name is Hannah and I work with 211. So 211 is a free and confidential helpline dealing in the area of non-emergency health and human services. So cases of emergency, definitely call 911. But we take care of all of those issues that maybe aren't immediate needs, but are still very pressing and very necessary for survival. So again, that phrase is non-emergency health and human services. So 211, like 911, is its own phone number, and we have live operators working the phones 24/7, 365. In addition to our phone service, we do also have a texting service, an online database, and an app. All of those kind of are organized around our central database, which houses all the agencies that we refer out to. But our phone line is kind of our main thing that we promote because it's kind of what sets us apart from a lot of those other directories is that we do have people who are able to kind of talk with individuals and bring up resources on their behalf instead of just giving them a web browser and saying like have at it. We have people who are able to guide them through it. We have our full-time staff, and some of those are bilingual staff members in English and Spanish. But then we also do contract with a language translation line, so we are able to serve people in over 200 languages. So as I mentioned, we operate out of United Way of the Midlands in Omaha, but we do serve all of Nebraska and parts of Iowa. If you are bordering like South Dakota or Iowa and are curious about how those boundaries work, every state in the US does have a 211 call center. They'll just be redirected to whichever one is in their state. And then of course, in the cases that somebody is dialing to 211 and they maybe come into our call center but are looking for different states, we have the direct phone lines that we're able to send them over to as well. Our database has over 1,400 agencies with 3,000 locations and over 3,400 programs. So we are constantly growing our database and looking to add new agencies in, because when we have callers calling from these regions, we really do want to reflect all of the services and the agencies that are able to help them. So that's one of the things that I'll probably touch on a little later is we are always looking for suggestions. And, if you have your own resource list that you want to send over to us and be like, hey, are these in there? Part of what I do is go through those lists and contact agencies that we don't have in our database to get them added in. But that way you can also, feel confident that if you are kind of want to pass over this referral side of what you guys do over to 211, we are still referring to the agencies that you might normally refer to. And we are AIRS certified. So as a result of that, because some databases I know people can kind of go in and put in their own entries. We do all of the entries on our side. So I'll collect a data form with information and enter it into our database that way. Because we have these AIRS standards that we have to adhere to. But then that also means that you're getting really high quality information that has been vetted and is going through a system that does regular updates, which is what Miranda does. So again, going back to that umbrella term of non-emergency health and human services. So definitely the biggest kind of bucket that we refer to in that grouping is basic human needs. So that's food pantries, financial assistance, I guess those are the two big ones. And then in financial assistance, broken down even further, it's primarily rental assistance and utility assistance. But we do have just a huge number of other agencies and services that we refer out to. So physical and mental health resources, employment, older Americans and persons with disabilities, children, youth, and families, emergency and disaster response. That one has become increasingly prevalent and a big chunk of what we do, especially this past year or so with COVID, and then even before that with the flooding. We've definitely become a central response and acting as that link between kind of government and the state organizations and disseminating that information out to callers. And there are a number of regions that direct all of their operations through us. For example, we are coordinating all of Iowa's vaccines through our 211 center right now, which has been quite an undertaking. We doubled our staff overnight pretty much to help deal with that. But that's definitely one area that we have been actively growing, and that has also just become increasingly important, again, with COVID and the floods. We list all the state and federal programs, and then we truly do just have, it feels like a non-exhaustive list. But again, the majority of what we refer to does fall into that basic human needs. So food pantries, financial assistance, utility assistance. So here are some statistics about the volume of calls and contacts essentially that we receive. So you'll see here that we did have a nice big spike in March, but then again in December. In December, we're handling a lot of calls for financial assistance, utility assistance, and care funds. And then, of course, in March, just a huge influx of questions about COVID and just like where, especially when things were, just starting and people didn't really know where to turn. We were often that central point and passing on information from some of those state and local county governments. So on this left, this graph is of the calls by month in 2020, but then on the right, I have the aggregate of the calls, texts, emails, and web sessions. So you'll see from 2019 to 2020, we definitely had just a ginormous spike. And again, that was primarily due to COVID. So I broke this down even further so that you could kind of identify your own county and see the number of calls that are coming in. Douglas County, absolutely, we get the most calls from there. So Omaha and then Sarpy County as well. But you will notice that we have calls from every single county in Nebraska, well, in your region as shown on this screen. And so there are definitely people who are using it across the state of Nebraska, and we're really trying to expand that outreach to make sure people outside of Omaha and Lincoln know about our resources. And then on the other side of that is make sure that we are accurately reflecting all of the agencies and wonderful organizations in your communities that are doing this work and connecting people to the right places to go for help. So again, here's kind of the needs. So this was, I believe, everything except for Douglas County we took out. So our NPPD Pennies for Power, we make a huge number of referrals there. COVID information, financial assistance, food, all of that stuff. So that's just kind of a quick breakdown so you can see that, again, what I was talking about, where the majority that we are referring to are basic human needs. I did want to show two other resources. So in addition to calling 211 or using our texting service, there is kind of a self-service online database, which you can explore. And actually, my link is broken. And so it's www.ne211.org. So here you can do search term by zip code, or if you type in your zip code here, and like if I do 68142 and then go down to food and then click on food pantries and fresh food, it brings up all the resources that we have kind of in this area. So on the right, we have a map. And then on the left is the list. So if you click on view details, and then it brings up the contact information, other pertinent information like hours, if you need to call or sign up ahead of time, if there are any fees, just anything else we feel like people would need to know. So that's just a very brief overview here. And I definitely recommend exploring kind of your region and seeing what's out there. And again, if you do notice that we are missing some and you'd like to reach out to me, I'd be ecstatic to take all of your recommendations so that I can make sure that our database is reflecting, again, all the agencies in your area. So that's that one. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is 211 counts. So this one is a fun kind of dashboard where you can see some of the data that we bring in and see what the needs are in your communities. So go to Nebraska. You can filter it by county, by congressional district, by Senate district, and by school district. And then you can also filter it by time frame. So if I go ahead and do Burt County, and for the last 365 days, and then toggle it to count, you can see that we've made 25 referrals to housing and shelter, 47 for utilities. And then if you click on all of these buckets, then it kind of breaks it down even further on the right. And then there's an interactive map down here, which you can also see. And it brings up some more information such as the population, the unemployment rate, the poverty rate, and so on. So this is one way if you're just kind of curious and want to see again what the needs are in your community. I definitely recommend playing around there. I think it's pretty fun. But if there is ever more specific data that you'd like, I'd be happy to pull it up for you. We can kind of go in and filter it, especially if there's a specific region or time frame or like area of referrals that you're curious about. I'd be happy to pull that up, and it might be a little easier for us to do on our side than using the 211 counts. So 211 counts is run by Washington University of St. Louis, and they actually take care of it for all the 211s across the US. So that's where you can kind of see, like, again, the aggregate data, but if you want to get a little more specific, feel free to reach out and we'd be happy to pull information for you. So here is my information. And basically the reason we're talking to you all today is because we really feel like 211 can be a really helpful tool for libraries, as you are often viewed as, the second responders in times of crisis. And so I'm actually going to turn it over to Miranda a little bit to talk about here. So Miranda does kind of our record update process, but she also used to work in the library systems. And so she's kind of a really great translator between 211 and libraries. So Miranda, I'm actually going to leave this screen up. Actually, no, I'll stop the share so we can see Miranda, but I'll go ahead and paste some of that information in the chat so that you have it. And then after Miranda speaks, we'd love to take any questions. So Miranda, all yours.
Well, really, I just wanted to touch on what I think is a really universal experience working in libraries, especially at the reference desk. But also importantly, if somebody isn't assigned to be a reference librarian and that isn't the skills that they've developed yet or the position that they fill, is how often we are a trusted source of information. A lot of times very vulnerable information that people may be hesitant to share. Frequently people come into libraries and feel that they can ask for those resources there. And this is just a really good tool for whether you're a reference librarian or a clerk, or maybe even a volunteer or an aide. If they have access to the computer and they have access to this link, then they can trust that they're going to be able to sync the patron up with this very specific needs that they're searching for, and that information is well vetted and it's updated on a yearly basis as well. Sometimes just checking a website, if that agency doesn't regularly update their website, you're not necessarily giving them the most up-to-date information. And that is part of my job in my position, curating the database, is to make sure that the programs there are still relevant, they're still active, and the correct operating hours, the eligibility is the same. We're updating that, because very frequently by the time somebody is looking for a food shelter or help with their utilities, they may be in a state of stress or desperation, and reaching that agency and finding out that the eligibility is not correct, or they're not open the day that they really need them, that can be extremely disheartening. So I think that as far as as libraries' missions to provide people with the most accurate information and helpful information, it's also a way to get them a channel to go in when sometimes there's 3 people waiting at the reference desk, and everybody feels like their question is a priority or needs to be taken care of first. Then this is just a really quick way to even have them navigate that website as well on a public computer that's at the library too. So there's just a lot of ways for this information to be accessed and interpreted in a manner that's going to immediately help that patron. I didn't know if maybe anybody had any questions or for me or Hannah.
Before we take questions, actually, I did want to kind of
sorry.
backtrack on myself. No worries. I realized I kind of forgot to share a pretty big part of what I wanted to talk about, which is if you or your libraries would like packets of promotional materials to distribute, I would love to send some your way. So on the screen right now is an example of our new business-sized card and the information that it has. We have them available in English and Spanish. And then we also have bilingual rack cards. So the longer ones that kind of look like a brochure, and they have English on one side and Spanish on the other. We do also have some posters available now. So if listening to this, you think 211 could be a really helpful tool for your library and you'd like us to send some materials your way, we'd be more than happy to do that. Yeah, so does anyone have any questions for Miranda or I, or about 211 or yeah. John, did you have a question?
I'm good. I'm just very pleased and impressed with the scope of your website and all the thoroughness of the resources listed there.
Thank you.
It's very helpful.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we just hope that 211 is useful to you guys in your work and makes your jobs a little bit easier. As Miranda mentioned, maybe not having to dig through the myriad of resources available, but kind of directing them towards one source.
Right, because we've been doing that, quite honestly. We've been sort of reinventing the wheel. So, but it's nice to see some of that all laid out in a more, shall we say, complete form.
And again, if you guys, if you have kind of, as you mentioned, reinvented the wheel or compiled your own database, like a directory, if you want to send that to me, I can go through and let you know exactly which ones we have. And then that also helps me because the ones that we're missing, I go ahead and reach out to them.
Okay.
Because we recognize that you are the experts in your communities, and sometimes it's hard for us to know, and we follow the breadcrumbs. Usually when I find one agency, I'll ask about other ones in their areas, but we're just always looking to make sure that our database is as complete as it can be.
Sure. Thanks.
Thank you. Did anyone else have any questions? Awesome. Well, I went ahead and put my contact information in the chat, and feel free to reach out again if you want any promotional materials, if any questions come up. And if you ever aren't really sure who the contact person is, you can, of course, just call 211 and kind of explain who you're looking for, and they can usually pass you on to the right person. So yeah, thanks so much for having us. And yeah, feel free to reach out.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Miranda. I think that was great information. I think librarians are the go-to people when someone needs some resources and aren't familiar with 211. So what a great connection.
Cool.
Does anybody have anything else? All right, I guess we are done here then. Thanks again for sharing your information.
Thank you all.
Thank you.